Hey everybody, Mark Comfort here. My wife Mimi and I own Cruise Holidays. And by the way, next Tuesday, the 14th of November, will be our 35th anniversary in business. Oh my gosh. So thank you if you are a client of ours. And thank you for your referrals too. And thank you for watching this. We're going to do a webinar today on Princess Alaska. And Mr. Joe Sieb, who is our wonderful representative from Princess Cruises, he will be going over the entire program of what Princess offers you for the incredible destination of Alaska. And I want you to know we're doing this seminar right now, or excuse me, this webinar right now, because honestly, you're ahead of the game if you start the planning process now for your Alaska vacation in 2024 or even in 2025. Traditionally, the biggest booking season of the month is right after the holidays, starting in January. And if you start your planning now, you'll have better chances of getting the accommodations you want. Cruise tours sell out even quicker than the cruise. That's the cruise and land combination both. They sell out quicker than just the cruises. So if you're wanting to do cruise tours, again, it's even more important to plan early. And we just had, or we're having right now, the best year we've ever had at Cruise Holidays at Kansas City. In 35 years, the best year ever. And most of the industry has done the same thing. And by the way, Alaska seems to be the leader in what's selling. Year in and year out, Alaska vacations are one of the highest ranked in satisfaction vacation destinations in the world. So we say to you, gosh, listen to the webinar, enjoy this. And if you've never been to Alaska, gosh, I've been there many, many times, over a dozen times. Our staff has all been there, and we sell more Alaskan than probably anybody in the Midwest. We love Alaska. We believe in doing the cruise and the tour. If you've got the time to do that, you'll never be disappointed you did that. And we also know everything on how to counsel you or advise you when it comes to Alaska. And Princess has been one of the leaders that which you're going to see today, if not the #1 leader in the entire cruise industry for taking people to Alaska for, gosh, probably 50 years or so. I know we've sold Princess cruises to Alaska and cruise tours to Alaska in record numbers for all 35 years that we've been in business, and our clients come back loving Princess, the Princess experience in Alaska. So with that said, Mr. Joe Sieb, thank you for joining us today and doing this. Let me turn it over to you.
Very nice, Mark. Thank you for the introduction. And you know, Mark, in your early days, 35 years ago, Alaska really wasn't a mainstream destination. So you are really one of the innovators of selling Alaska. And, you know, adding 34 and a half more years experience onto those early months means an awful lot, because there's an awful lot that goes into one's decision when they're making a decision to go to Alaska. So today I'm going to tell kind of a story. I'm going to talk about Alaska itself. I'm going to talk about Princess itself, and I'm going to boast a little bit about Princess. And then I'm going to kind of put it all together. And with putting it all together, you find out that it's just this phenomenal destination. Isn't this picture just absolutely phenomenal? That is our Princess livery logo on the front of our ship there, the Sea Witch. And it looks so beautiful with Marjorie Glacier, the beautiful crown jewel of all of Alaska, deep into Glacier Bay National Park, as the backdrop. It really just sets off the ship just beautifully. On every single cruise tour, and that is when you cruise between Vancouver and Anchorage, and then do a land tour north of Anchorage, on every single one of those itineraries, with one single exception for the entire 2024 season, we call on Glacier Bay National Park. And it's where we enter the bay early in the morning. We spend the entire day in Glacier Bay National Park. We have park rangers that board our ship and spend the entire day entertaining our customers. So I'm going to talk more about that in a little bit, but this is Marjorie Glacier. When I was last here, She was calving a great deal, and calving is just simply when the water that's falling off, breaking off the glacier, falls into the water. When it's calving, or it was calving a great deal on the left-hand side. This summer, I'm told it's been calving right in the middle of the glacier. And so when you look at it, it's hard to tell, but Marjorie Glacier is a mile wide at the water. It's really just a phenomenal number. It's probably 30 or 40 stories high. So things are really difficult sometimes, showing pictures of Alaska just to get our mind wrapped around just how massive everything is. So part of my boasting about Princess is that we've been voted as the #1 by our peers and by Mark's company and travel agencies around the country as the #1 cruise line for 19 years in a row. We really take that to heart, and we tweak things ever so little each year to make it that much better. So it's something we don't take lightly, and we review everything in detail every year to make sure we're appealing to people. Whenever I tell a Princess story, it really begins with what we refer to internally as our shared purpose. And that is, and it goes like this, that is to share our world. Today, that's Alaska. Even though we cruise the entire world cruises included. Australia, New Zealand, South America, the Caribbean, Mexican Riviera, Panama Canal, Canada, New England, Europe, and I'm probably forgetting a few, up and down the west coast of the United States, Asia, Japan. We cruise the entire world. Alaska is really what we're best known for, and it's really our heart and soul. We deliver it from the heart. A lot of our employees in Alaska are local Alaskans. They love to show off their state, and they know it really well. To protect the earth, which really means leaving behind us a smaller environmental footprint than as small as we can. And the best example, we do that worldwide the best we can. The best example of all of that across the world is really in Juneau. When we port in Juneau, the ship docks, we tie up, and I'm going to simplify things a bit, but we actually turn the key off on the ship. We take out a big extension cord and plug into local power. And it's all because for environmental reasons to cut down on pollution. Now, of course, it's a lot more technical than that, but it's a process referred to as cold ironing. And so we do that when we port in Juneau. And then to create lasting memories, that's the whole key to everything we do are those last 3 words. If you come home and tell your friends and family and neighbors about what a great trip you had on your Princess Alaska cruise or cruise tour, then we know we've accomplished what we've set out to. Creating lasting memories is what everything we do is a derivative of creating lasting memories. So that might be building a new ship or creating a new venue on a ship, designing a new shore excursion, tweaking an itinerary. It's all designed to create these lasting memories. All right, so Alaska, the #1 reason we say we want to go to Alaska, of course, is to see glaciers. You can see this picture again. This is Marjorie Glacier again, seeing it from a little bit different perspective. So the ship enters the bay early in the morning, 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning. National Park Rangers come out on a small boat, jump on our ship, and spend the entire day entertaining our customers. If there's enough kids in the 3 to 7-year-old age bracket, we have a park ranger that boards the ship that spends the entire day just with the kids. It's an incredibly engaging destination for people of all ages. It's evolved into probably, anecdotally anyway, the #1 multi-generational cruise destination out there. And it's really because everybody's engaged. Doesn't matter if you're 3 years old or 33 or 83, everybody loves Alaska. You can see these folks on one of our ships. You can see how they're dressed. You can see that there's plenty of public deck area, viewing area on all of the Princess ships. Our ships were built for scenic cruising. And so you can see these folks. And just notice how they're dressed. They're not necessarily dressed in winter clothing, but rather they're dressed to dress in layers. So if once the temperature drops, or excuse me, rises about 10 degrees, these folks will take out that outer jacket and they'll still have their sweatshirt on. But when you're in Glacier Bay National Park and when you're viewing glaciers, you're surrounded by ice. So if it's a cool, misty day, you want to be prepared because you want to spend your entire day or as much as possible out on deck, soaking in that scenery and just being in awe of that glacier. So make sure you bring a stocking cap with you and a pair of gloves. This fella that's walking away from us there, he's dressed perfectly for Alaska. So glacier viewing opportunities on every cruise tour, which includes a voyage from Vancouver to Anchorage. And I'll show a map after a little bit here. We have 2 glacier viewing opportunities: Glacier Bay National Park on all but one sailing throughout the year, and a second opportunity as well. We'll talk more about that later. The number 2 reason is to see Denali Park. Look at how beautiful it is. Denali Park is 6 million acres. Of course, we can't see it all, but on the majority of our cruise tours, there's a tour into the park itself with a wonderful narrative told by the driver of the motor coach about how people lived years ago in this area, pointing out wildlife, and hopefully you'll see dolls, sheep, etc. Speaking of wildlife, it's the number 3 reason we say we want to go to Alaska, and it's always one of the highlights for me personally. The Denali Big 5 are referred to as caribou, number 1. I can just about guarantee you'll see caribou if you go on a cruise tour with Princess. Likewise, Dall sheep, you'll see them on the rocky cliff sides as you're touring into the park. Moose and bears kind of seem to be the wild cards, but hopefully you'll be able to see them as well. And just as kind of a little side note, Mark, I don't know if you've ever observed it, but when I've been cruising in Glacier Bay National Park, I've seen bear from the ship, actually. So make sure you bring your binoculars with you and be ready. Sometimes from a distance, it's a bit difficult to tell if the bear you're seeing is a brown bear or a black bear. And the best way to really tell, especially if you're on land, which type of bear it is to run, climb a tree. If it's a black bear, it'll follow you right up the tree. If it's a brown bear, it'll knock that tree over. Anyway, and then hopefully you'll see the Alaskan version of the gray wolf as well. All right. And then, of course, while it's not one of the Denali Big 5, it might be one of the most exciting parts of your cruise experience, and that's to see whales and see whales breaching. And there's a couple of likely places to see those whales. And as we talk about the itinerary, I'll point that out a little bit more. I've been to Alaska like Mark many, many times. I've seen whales on every single trip. I've seen whales from the window of my motor coach before cruising in Alaska. All right, so just to kind of go through some of the practical itineraries that we offer. One is what we call cruising, what we call the Inside Passage. And by definition, the Inside Passage is the area from Vancouver to Ketchikan. You see it on the map there. And it is 330 miles long. It takes the ship about 30 hours. Sometimes people refer to it as the Inland Passage, and it's the same thing. The ship will leave Vancouver or from Seattle, cruise north, usually about as far north as Skagway, and then back to Vancouver or Seattle. And that's a 7-day Inside Passage itinerary with 1 glacier viewing opportunity. It'll be a great experience. It's a great itinerary. If when you're cruising or when you're reading about Alaska or when you are choosing shore excursions, if you see this logo, North to Alaska, it identifies that activity or that shore excursion as part of our onboard enrichment program. And a couple of things that you'll see. Here's a picture of the park ranger. He's part of our onboard enrichment program. You can see that he's entertaining what appears to be two different families, explaining to them exactly what they're seeing when it comes to viewing that crown jewel in Glacier Bay, Marjorie Glacier. You can have a private audience with one of the park rangers. They typically set up a nice table outside maybe outside the buffet or some other part of the ship, and they sell local memorabilia. But it's a great experience. It's part of our onboard enrichment program. This young couple here, you can see they're holding real life sled dog puppies. When we port in Skagway, on the majority of the days we're there, we have a real life dog musher that will board the ship with their sled dog puppies. And they'll tell a little story about their sled dog racing, etc. And he or she will let you hold their puppies, pet them, have a photo taken with them, obviously. And something I found out here a while back is that the mushers actually really like this. They like people holding the puppies and petting them, because when they're racing, the dogs have to be familiar and comfortable with other people other than just their master. And so by sharing them with other people, the dogs become more comfortable. Or you might try some axe throwing or an axe throwing demonstration as well. Lots of onboard activity that's part of our North Alaska program that enriches your vacation. It brings the destination to life on board that ship. Lots of speakers. You might see a presentation advertised during your cruise, maybe just on glaciers. And you may ask yourself, do I really want to go spend an hour in a dark theater when I'm in Alaska? And my answer would be you certainly do, because you suddenly know a lot about glaciers. You understand them. So the next day when you're in Glacier Bay National Park, you understand what you're looking at and what you're experiencing. All right, a couple more North Alaska experiences that I just want to point out. Well, the puppies on board, these are the highlighted in yellow. Various award-winning documentary films will be presented throughout the week. And at the bottom of my screen there, you see one referred to as Cook My Catch. So if you're booking, for example, a fishing shore excursion in Juneau, like I've done, and if you catch fish, and if the shore excursion is defined and described as part of the Cook My Catch program, you can have the guide. You can ask for the guide to have the fish, the fish you caught, delivered to the ship and prepared for you at dinner that night on board the ship. A phenomenal experience. Remember earlier I mentioned, what's that?
We did that before and had it, and my gosh, it was a great big halibut, and we fed, I think, 30 some odd people. It was amazing.
Oh my word. Well, I mentioned earlier that creating lasting memories is our goal. And no matter who you ask in my family about our last trip, what's their number one memory? And it's clearly the evening we ate our own salmon that we caught earlier in the day. So, and I actually have a real life picture of the platter that was delivered to our table after a bit here. All right, a couple things, practical things about Princess, just to be important or share some importance. We've been in business since 1965. If anybody in the room, or I should say observing this today, is old enough to remember the Love Boat TV show, we were the backdrop for the Love Boat. We're headquartered in Los Angeles. Mark mentioned we've been cruising Alaska for over 50 years. This coming year will be our 55th year. And Mark, your staff, your office has been selling and experiencing Alaska with Princess almost our entire history there. So really quite amazing. A couple of the real highlights about what we offer in Alaska, as kind of a summary, is this enriching experience, the dedicated rail service that I'll talk more about, the lodges that we have in Alaska. We own and build, purpose-built for our customers, 5 different lodges in Alaska, and then the employees. The entire Alaska experience is in the interior of Alaska, once we get on land, is delivered for the most part by local Alaskans that are Princess employees. So they're not contract employees, they are true Princess employees with a phenomenal amount of experience. All right, let's walk through what a sample trip might look like. Number one, we already talked a little bit about round trip Seattle or from Vancouver. You would board the ship in one of those two ports. You cruise north, typically as far north as Skagway, one glacier viewing opportunity, then back to Vancouver or Seattle. An inside passage itinerary. We have 3 different ships on this itinerary with one glacier viewing opportunity. It's a 7-day cruise. You might see Glacier Bay National Park. You might see a glacier called Dawes Glacier at the end of a long fjord called Endicott Arm. Or in some cases, we go all the way north to see Hubbard Glacier. Hubbard Glacier is, remember I mentioned Marjorie Glacier is a mile wide at the water? Hubbard Glacier is 6 miles wide at the water. You see in that picture how the glacier is calving. If that ice that's calving, if it happens to be some of the ice that was formed at the beginning of the glacier, which is 76 miles inland, it would be 400 years old. Really just a phenomenal statistic. All right, if you're going on a cruise tour with Princess, you cruise on the cruise part and itinerary on what we call the Voyage of the Glaciers. We leave Vancouver, we cruise for 7 days to Whittier, which is the port city for Anchorage. And then from there, we tour up north of Anchorage in the Denali area. So the cruise is, for the most part, the same every week, a couple of slight variations. It's always 7 days. And then the land trip will be anywhere from 3 additional days to as many as 7 or 8 or 9 additional days on land. All right, so let's go through a sample trip. We fly to Vancouver. We start our trip in Vancouver. And all of us in the business agree that if you can add a day to your vacation, whether you're starting your trip in Vancouver and going north, so I'm going to go north in our sample, Vancouver to Anchorage, excuse me. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to go Vancouver north in my sample here. Remember, if you wanted to, you can fly to Alaska first, Fairbanks or Anchorage, and cruise south to Vancouver. So when I share this example with you, I'm going to go north, but you can certainly do the trip in exactly the opposite direction. So by all means, if you're able to add a day to your vacation, fly to Vancouver, hotel for a night or two, experience one of the most beautiful cities in the world, really. A lot of people consider it the #1 most beautiful city in North America for sure. The ship sets sail right from downtown Vancouver. The port is called Canada Place. You can see the ship there. Board the ship late in the afternoon. The ship will set sail, cruise through the inside passage for 30 hours to Ketchikan. A wonderful day. It always seems to be 65 degrees and sunny. I can't guarantee that though, but that's usually what it's like. And if you don't drink coffee or don't like to relax, you'll learn to drink coffee and relax this day cruising through the inside passage. On some sailings, we cruise around the outside part of Vancouver Island and back into the inside passage, other times not. But it's a phenomenal day. It's a great way to start your trip, very relaxing. And if you're coming south, it's a great way to conclude your trip on that last day. Here's another photo of the ship cruising the inside passage. We have an onboard naturalist on board the ship the entire 7 days with our customers. And during the inside passage day, they spend most of their day up on the bridge on the ship looking for advanced sightings and they'll point out interesting sites like maybe a lighthouse or a fishing village and hopefully those whales as well. All right, Ketchikan is typically our next port of call. Ketchikan is known as the salmon fishing capital of the world, also really well known for its totem poles, of course. You can, if you go on a shore excursion that takes you out to Saxman Indian Village, you'll see totem pole carvers at work. Really quite phenomenal. The most famous carver in the world is in Ketchikan and carving totem poles. It's a great port just to walk around in with a self-guided map and learning it on your own. Really quite a neat port. Then typically our next port of call is Juneau. Juneau, if you're going north, is your first chance to see a glacier, Mendenhall Glacier. It's about 10 miles out of downtown Juneau. You can see it by motor coach and a tour that takes you out to the visitor center, or you can do it really just the opposite. You can take a helicopter ride out on top of the glacier and experience it that way. And that's really the ultimate way to experience Mendenhall Glacier. Whale watching, there's a great whale watching excursion on a smaller boat. And then part of our North Alaska Enrichment program is Libby Riddles, the first female Iditarod champion, boards the ship and conducts a presentation on sled dog racing and her personal exploits, sled dog racing, and really telling a very compelling story about how she convinced her parents to let her move to Alaska after graduating from high school early. And she lived on her own and went on to become the first female Iditarod champion. Remember I mentioned fishing here. Mark did as well. Mark, where did you catch your halibut? Do you remember? Was it Juneau or Skagway?
It was actually Ketchikan.
Ketchikan, there you go. Okay.
And how I remember that is Ketchikan, like you said, is known as the salmon capital of the world. And here we go and we catch a halibut. But I also remember because my, talking about multi-generational families, my father-in-law, who was a big fisherman, was on with us. And my son at that time was 7 years old. And it was the funniest thing, Joe. And to this day, this was 1992, by the way, we have this picture in Mimi's office of her dad and her son and me with this great big halibut. And Spencer, our son, at 7 years old, a halibut looks like half a fish, right? And, it's wide like this, but it looks like half a fish. Spencer says, Papa, where's the other half of this fish? And Papa said, Spencer, it's still down there. We got to catch the other half of it too. So I remember that.
There
like
you
go.
So you can see these folks are fishing. They purchased a shore excursion that was part of our North Alaska program, Cook by Catch. They told the guide they'd like to have it prepared. And I'd like to say this is a picture of the fish we caught. It's not, it's a stock photo. However, I will say that this platter right here is the platter that they brought out to my dining room table the night I went. Again, photos sometimes don't do things justice. The wait staff brought this out. They had to bring out a second table to set down next to our table just to put the platter down. The platter was a good 4 feet wide, and then the head waiter came over and served it to us. So awesome. I'm a little hungry right now, actually. Looks good.
Nothing better than fresh salmon too.
Skagway or Icy Strait Point, our next port of call. Typically, Skagway's home to the gold rush of 1898. There really wouldn't be a Skagway if there hadn't been a gold rush. And the most famous shore excursion in all of Alaska, maybe the entire world, is the White Pass Scenic Railway that follows one of the two main paths the men took in 1898 to get up into the Yukon to seek their fortune in gold. It takes you to frightening heights, beautiful heights, 25 feet up. You can look out over your left shoulder and you can see the ship down in the pier. And then the train climbs another 500 feet, totaling 3,000 feet. Wonderful narrative told the entire train ride. And if you are on an itinerary with Icy Strait Point, it's a newer port in Alaska. I mean, the cruise line, we've been using it for several years. It's a bit more remote. There's a great bear search shore excursion. And if anybody's interested in zip lining, there's a 5-minute zip line in Icy Strait Point. I don't zip line myself, but I'm told that is a long, long zip line. So really bringing you back to nature with that. Here's just a personal photo of the ship leaving Skagway. I always suggest that people go, upon leaving Skagway, maybe 15 minutes to 30 minutes out of port, go to one of the top decks, go to the rear of the ship, and this will be your view. Quite surreal, quite amazing. And then Glacier Bay National Park as we're going north, or if you're going north, and if you're going north, the next day, College Fjord cruising, where the ship goes down a long, narrow fjord called College Fjord, turns around and comes back right back out. Narrow by Alaska standards. You can see that it's still pretty wide. There might be 2 or 3 glaciers within your view at any one time. If you're coming south, instead of College Fjord, we visit Hubbard Glacier, which is the photo in the upper right-hand corner.
Hey, Joe, let me interject a second.
Yeah,
a lot of people, I think our audience needs to know that not all cruise lines can get permits to go into Glacier Bay and Princess because of your seniority. You can't get those permits. Same way with College Fjord. Not all cruise lines go into College Fjord, but it's a spectacular place, and Princess has that available. Not all cruise lines go to College Fjord.
Only 2 permits a day are allowed, provided to ships of the large ship category, which we are, to enter Glacier Bay National Park. So speaking to what you just said, Mark, it's really special that we're able to do that. Then we arrive at Whittier, which is the port city for Anchorage. Okay, downtown Anchorage and the airport's about 60 miles away. If you were going on a cruise without doing what we call a cruise tour, you would likely transfer to the airport and fly home. If you're going on a cruise tour, and again, that's when you go on this 7-day cruise, get off the ship, you board, typically you board the Princess rail cars and the train right next to the ship, and go to begin the land part of your cruise tour vacation. There are some cruise tour itineraries where you board a motor coach first, and that's just simply because they're going a different direction. There'll be a rail travel segment someplace else on your land tour. Board the train and away we go. It's dedicated rail cars to Princess customers. We have one train that goes to our Denali Princess Wilderness Lodge, and a separate train that goes to our Mount McKinley Lodge. So you may go right to our Denali Lodge. It's 8 hours later. Wonderful experience. There'll be with limited exceptions, there's a tour into Denali Park that's included. If anybody wants to whitewater raft, this is a great place to do it. You can see the photo on the right. This young couple is on the back side of the lodge overlooking the Nanana River. And again, photos just don't do things justice. That river is a long, long, long ways down from the lodge. And if you whitewater raft and maybe somebody in your party doesn't, the one that doesn't can stand out on this deck and watch you go by. Really quite an experience. Then our Mount McKinley Lodge, 45 miles away, tucked back in the wilderness by design. And it has you can see the deck on the right-hand side of the lodge there. It's the only public deck in all of Alaska that potentially has a view of the Great One, also known as Denali. So this will be your view if the weather cooperates. It's 41 miles away. If the weather hasn't cooperated during the day, you can leave a wake-up call for yourself, and we'll call you at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And by all means, you want to do that and run down and you can see them out. So really quite an experience. Has anybody seen the TV show Treehouse Masters? And if you have, season 9, episode 9, the group of people that build these elaborate tree houses built one on our Mount McKinley Princess Wilderness grounds. That's the tree house right there. From the tree house, you potentially have a view of Mount McKinley as well. All right, some cruise tour itineraries upon arriving in Anchorage go south on a motor coach a couple hours to our Kenai Lodge. And then from there up to the Denali area later. It's an area where people say Alaskans go to vacation. So the Kenai Lodge, or you might go on a trip that's really 8 hours east of Denali and to our Copper River Lodge, where you might, well, this is where the Copper River salmon come from, if you've ever had Copper River salmon. And typically, Mark, you probably know, but you only see it on menus in fine seafood type restaurants for several weeks, maybe in August.
Yeah, exactly right. And I've had it before and it's great.
Yeah, this is where it's coming from. And then in some cases, you go all the way north to Fairbanks. And we have a lodge in Fairbanks as well. So as we kind of wrap up, I'm going to go through some frequently asked questions and important items. One is, it's often asked of us, and when you visit with Mark's staff, this is really a key part of what they offer to you. They're going to help you sort through these questions and find answers for you that suit you, okay? They won't be canned answers, but ones that suit you. When's the best time to go? The season's mid-May till mid-September. I can tell you from experience, it's great the whole season. If you go early in the year, Alaska will be cool and crisp, like you might have conjured up in your mind. If you wait till late June, July, and August, the growing season and the long days are in full swing. You'll see the gigantic flowers and the growing season is in full bloom. If you wait till mid-August into September, you might see some fall colors. So it's great the whole time. In July, it's about 10 degrees warmer on average than May or September, but you really still have to pack about the same amount and the same way. Direction. Do I want to go northbound or southbound? That's probably the #1 question. Mark's staff will help walk you through that, what is best for you. They're really equally as good. There's really, it might just come down to something practical like which is the best route to go for air scheduling, but they're both great directions. Packing and dress. People during the day in Alaska will be dressed just like you would expect people to be dressed. Khaki pants, blue jeans, sweatshirts, etc. Pack to dress in layers is what we usually say, but bring a stocking cap with you and bring a pair of gloves. Then if it's cool and misty in Glacier Bay National Park, you will be prepared and you'll enjoy the day. During the evening, the spirit of the dress code for 5 of the 7 evenings of the cruise is called smart casual. Mark knows we're of British heritage. That's why we use that adjective smart to decide the dress or to define it. And that just simply means everybody looks nice. Yeah. 2 nights, the dress code is called formal. And on formal nights, you want to be a little bit more dressed up. Men should probably have a coat and tie on or a sweater and tie. Women will be dressed anywhere from a dressy pantsuit to maybe a long gown. After you've sat down with Cruise Holidays and you've talked it through, you've figured out which cruise you want to go on, which cruise tour, you figured out your air schedule, your transfers, if you want to buy insurance, which we typically recommend. After that, the additional spending that you can expect are shore excursions from the ports of call, ranging anywhere from a $40 city tour to a $400 helicopter ride. Land excursions from the lodges are additional as well. Dining at the lodges, on board the train, and a couple of venues outside of the main dining room on the ship. We refer to them as specialty dining and casual dining. Wi-Fi, crew appreciation, we used to refer to as gratuities, and beverages are additional as well. Everybody has to have a passport. I really urge everybody, when we're done here, this afternoon to dig out your passport, make sure it's good for at least 6 months from the last date you plan to travel. And then recommendations, of course, I think Mark already mentioned early on, is that it's selling really well. So it seems like a long time away, but it's really not in our Alaska selling world. So by all means, you want to consider it now. And if 2024 isn't right for you, we have our 2024 availability already as well. The Princess Plus package, that typically is what is promoted and probably will relate to what you're interested in, includes that Wi-Fi, crew appreciation, and beverages. That's why I have that asterisk there. So you can purchase your trip without those things or with them. As a salute to the military, we have a military onboard credit program. We'll ask you for a copy of your DD 214 form. We'll send that into Princess, and by we, I mean one of Mark's staff, to see if you qualify for an added shipboard credit as our salute to the military. And in the case of a 7-day Alaska cruise, that's $100 of shipboard credit for that account, that office. And then medallion class cruising. All of our ships are medallion class cruising, which is a wearable device designed to make your trip incredibly self-happening. You walk up to your stateroom door, your door unlocks just by virtue of having this medallion in your pocket or on your person. It's what you use to purchase things on board the ship. And you can actually use it now to purchase at quite a few vendors on land as well. And you pre-register for your cruise long before you ever leave. And you arrive the port in Seattle or Vancouver or Anchorage, and you are already checked in. You walk through security and board the ship, and it's really quite a nice way to start your trip. So that's kind of what we offer in Alaska, 2024 and 25. And before you know it, we'll be talking about 2026, Mark.
Well, I guess one season at a time, right, Joe? And,
right, exactly.
For those people that did just tune in a little bit later, let me rephrase or say again what I said at the start of this presentation. Why I asked Joe to be on right now in the middle part of November is that we wanted you to have an opportunity to understand the benefits of planning, starting the planning process of your Alaska vacation now, as opposed to waiting till, statistically, most people wait till right after the first of the year, January or February, to plan their vacations. And Alaska has just become so popular. And especially if you want the cruise tours, they sell out even before the 7-day cruises do. And Joe, I made some notes here that I thought were important. Other people want many more and more since the pandemic. Suites and balconies have become so very important. And Joe, I know you've always recommended and trained our staff that there's not a better destination in the world where you see world-class scenery for 7 straight days, or if you do the tour for 10, 12, 14 straight days. So while you're on the ship, getting a veranda, getting a balcony, we feel is, if it's within the budget, you should absolutely do that. You will not regret spending the money to have that balcony available. Joe, you talked a lot about, and you showed it in the pictures, and I'm so glad you did, multi-generational travel. And personally, I don't think there's a better destination in the world for 3 or even 4 generations of families to experience than Alaska, because there truly is something for everybody. And we've done this a couple times before, our personal family, and I recommend it so strongly. Thirdly, and Joe, you were so right. We sit down and we counsel everybody from what they are looking for most, you know. And Joe, we so often get as you described with the big five, but so many people want to see bears, or so many people want to see whales. And the reality is we do know when the best time of the year to go to Alaska is, if those are one of the key reasons why you're wanting to go to Alaska. Bears, whales, wildlife, things like that. It's very, very, very important. So the number one, by the way, when you put up the most asked questions, you are so right. But I'll genderize this statement. And it seemed like we'll have the guys ask us about when the best time to go and which the best tours are. The ladies almost always 100% in 35 years ask what to wear. What should I wear? And they're talking not only during the daytime on these tours, but they're talking about dinners at night when they need to or want to dress up just a little bit more than they do during the day. So we go over all of that. We know these tours, and Joe knows this because he gets our staff on his cruises up to Alaska, but we can advise you from firsthand experience about what the ships have to offer and what you should know and what to wear, which tours to do, how long is the best tour to do along with that cruise. And I have a simple recommendation for that I've learned over the years. I've done it short and I've done it longer, and I can tell you what, you'll never regret the more time you spend in that last great frontier of Alaska. There's nothing in the world like Alaska. And then we'll help you with which tours during the cruise, especially, or when you're up in Denali National Park at one of those beautiful Princess Lodges. We'll go over with you what some of the tours are that are optional that you should consider doing. I personally, Joe, the helicopter tours, which are very expensive, or the float plane tours, gosh, they are expensive. But in my mind, they are worth every penny of it. So you make the decision how you want to spend your kids' inheritance, but I can promise you, you will have memories that will truly last a lifetime, like Mimi and I have, as I described earlier, with her dad, who is now deceased, and our kids when they were 30 years younger in Alaska. And by the way, Joe, that was that experience I told you about was on the Island Princess, which was known as one of the first love boat cruise lines.
Wow. Island and Pacific Princess, sister ships, were the original love boat ships. You bet. That's interesting. That's a good story to tell. Good story to have. So Mark, how do people get a hold of you?
Well, listen, I think it's on the screen right now. The best thing to do, I think, without a doubt, is set up an appointment with one of our incredible, knowledgeable, caring vacation advisors at this number right here, 816-505-1500, 816-505-1500. We work by appointments now, and the best thing to do, whether you want to come in and meet with us face to face, that's obvious. I like that. I'm old school like that. I would recommend that. But we can also set up an appointment to do something over Zoom or just over the phone, whichever you would like, and kind of review what you're looking for, what you want, and give you our suggestions on all the options that Princess has when it comes to Alaska. But I can promise you this, if you plan now and deposit, say within the next 30 days or so, you'll have a better chance of getting the accommodations you want. That's really important, especially if you want one of those veranda balcony cabins, or especially if you want a suite, or maybe it's a family and you're wanting connecting rooms or rooms close together. Very, very, very important to do that. Princess has, without a doubt, the most loyal repeat customer base of any cruise line in the world out there. And Joe, while we used to sell Alaska as a once in a lifetime experience, we don't do that anymore, because we see more and more people going back to Alaska for a second or third or fourth or fifth or sixth or seventh time, and I see why, because you'll love it every single time. But we would love to help you with your Alaska vacation. I can promise you this: we'll make sure you get what's best for you as far as the cruise or the cruise and tour goes. And if you put down a relatively small deposit, that will hold it right now, the cabin for you and the tour for you, cabin on the cruise and the tour for you if you do a cruise tour, or just the cabin if you do a cruise. And then final payment is normally 90 to 120 days before the cruise actually leaves. We'll review the suggestions we have for you for your pre-cruise package or your pre-tour package or your post-cruise package or your post-cruise package, whichever way you go, we'll recommend. That will help you with air if you need air. And we are a strong believer in the travel insurance that, remember, you go to Vancouver too here, or you go to one of the Canadian ports, it's always on every stop of every cruise line. That's why you need to have that passport, because you do go to Canada, and that is a foreign country. So, but the good news, everybody speaks English up there, and they take the dollar and our credit cards very, very warmly. And Joe, don't you think that it's wise counsel for everybody, especially if they're looking at the cruise tours? You know, the tours have less space available than the cruise ships do. So people wanting to do the cruise and the tour, they really do need to think ahead of time even more than people just wanting to go on the cruise. Do you agree?
Well, certainly that's right. And again, it seems like a long ways away next summer, but it really isn't in our world. And every year, Alaska, we're kind of in the middle of one of the busiest booking periods of the year, of the season. And then after the first of the year is another big one. But if you book now, you're getting in, before that big rush after the first of the year. But there's scenery on either side of the ship throughout your experience. But yes, we have less inventory on the cruise tours than we do on the cruise only. But there's still space available, but it's just advisable to make your plans now.
Yeah. Joe, when you and I were talking before we started the webinar, you were telling me, I asked you told me that you had Princess has had more bookings right now than you've ever had at this point to Alaska or for Alaska cruises and cruise tours, right?
Well, we certainly have a lot, and it just speaks to what a great destination it is. And there's, we all know we've gone through several years of tough travel times. And so there's a great deal of pent up demand just for all travel, and Alaska in particular. Again, Mark, if you remember back in the early days, Alaska wasn't mainstream. And, now a lot of people have been to Alaska, and the market's much bigger, and there's more and more people going every single year.
The other thing, Joe, I really want to point out, and I'd like you to comment on this comment too. Alaska, at least for us, has been one of the destinations where many people go for their first cruise. And in a lot of cases, it's people that didn't think they would like cruising or thought they might get seasick or whatever it might be. And finally, their spouse or their family talks them into going on that cruise. In almost 100% of the cases, those skeptical people about cruising come back saying they loved it, loved it, loved it, and it was some of the best waters, and they didn't get sick, and they loved the experience from start to finish. So you agree with that, Joe? It's a great destination.
And they say, I want to go to Panama Canal or Canada, New England, or on a Caribbean cruise next. I mean, absolutely. It's full of first-time cruisers. And yes, they all want to repeat because we just deliver such an awesome product. Alaska presents itself to all of us in such a great way. It's so scenic and it's cultural at the same time. It's a little bit different than almost any place else in the world. And it's domestic, which is really interesting, other than Canada. But for the most part, it's a domestic destination that is dynamic, cultural, scenic, kind of all wrapped into one.
Yeah, Joe, I want to make a statement that I hope my audience will really appreciate, because you and I are so blessed being in this industry for such a long time. We get to travel and go to places all over the world. And I'll tell you, one of the things I will say to you now, when it comes to glaciers, when it comes to wildlife, when it comes to just beautiful scenery, there is no place in the world that compares to Alaska. So, and I say that from a lot of experience all over the world, seeing beautiful places, but right here in our own country, you can see one of the most spectacular places in the world, like Joe said, especially for glaciers, wildlife, and just the overall beautiful scenery is beyond anything you'll see anywhere in the world, in my opinion.
I agree 100%, 100%.
With that, Joe, I wanted to say thank you so much. I guess the last thing I'd like to say to our audience is, and Joe, please comment on this. As the ships fill up and availability goes down, the prices go up, right, Joe? So people are wise the sooner they make their decision from a pricing point of view.
Well, you're right. And the beauty of it is, with limited exceptions, all you have to do is make your decision now, make a small deposit, and make sure you're booking in a promotion that has a refundable deposit, and it's refundable.
Yeah.
So you really can't beat the method of making the booking now, getting what you want, and you have until about 90 days to 100 days to cancel, but before your cruise. So by all means, try to make a decision now. Make sure the availability is there for you and get what you want.
Exactly. Joe, with that, let me say happy Thanksgiving to you, and I thank you for taking your time today to share what makes Princess Cruises specifically to Alaska with your cruises and tours so very, very special. And over 50 years, I can't even imagine, maybe it's 1 million or 2 million people you've made memories that last a lifetime, because it's a destination that is, in my opinion, a must-see, must-experience destination. So, Joe, with that said, thank you so much and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Likewise, ditto, and go Alaska.
Take care, everybody. This is Mark Comfort. Give us a call at 816-505-1500, 505-1500, or go to our website, CHKC, that stands for Cruise Holidays of Kansas City, .travel. Okay? Take care. Bye-bye.